She paid for his coffee before she knew his name. Maya handed the steaming cup to the soldier with a small smile and a trembling hand. The diner was quiet, rain sliding down the windows in thin silver lines. Her free coffee slips were almost gone. It was a small thing, a single cup, a few cents shaved from her own drawer, but it felt like an offering. The man took the cup, nodded, and settled into the corner booth as if he had been carrying the weight of many miles. That moment began something neither of them expected. Before we dive into this incredible story, drop a comment below and tell us what city you're watching from. And if you're ready for more powerful stories like this one, smash that like button and hit subscribe. It really helps create amazing videos for you. Now let's continue. Maya was 23 and the backbone of a small-town diner that smelled of coffee and fried bread. She had learned to move fast and smile faster. The diner belonged to her Aunt Ruth, who had fallen ill and left the little place to Maya's hands. There were bills to count and pipes to mend. There was a small boy named Jonah who slept under a stack of aprons and believed his mother could fix anything with a hug. Maya kept a jar of free coffee slips on the counter. The slips were a promise she made to anyone who needed a warm drink and a place to sit. They were more than paper. They were a kind of mercy. Tonight she used one without thinking. The soldier who entered looked ordinary at first. A hat pulled low, boots softened by journeys, a jacket with his collar turned up. But his eyes held a distance, a fatigue that went beyond lack of sleep. He carried a small cardboard box under his arm and wore dog tags that told stories by glint alone. He sat near the window and drank the coffee as if each sip drew a map of the past back into his chest. Thomas Walker was older than Maya by a decade. He had spent years moving between places, carrying messages, waiting for orders, and learning to hold himself tight against noise. War had given him a slow quiet. Home had become a complicated idea. He arrived in the town because the road had run out of directions and because a letter had called him back to something he could not name. Maya watched him with curiosity and a small protective impulse. She was used to travelers and tradespeople, to lonely men who read a paper and left without fuss. Thomas was different. The way he looked at the rain suggested he had been waiting not for the weather, but for a decision. They traded small words across coffee cups. He spoke in measured sentences. He told her he was moving on foot, taking chances, and trying to find the courage to go home. Maya told him about her son and the diner and the jar. They found common ground in small confessions, the ache of missing someone, the stubborn wish to be seen. Days passed. Thomas returned. He left a careful tip when he could, avoided the register when he could not. He sat with his box of letters and sometimes wrote into it, folding his thoughts like fragile paper cranes. The diner watched these movements like a friend who preferred to keep certain confidences. One rainy morning, Thomas left the box under the counter and did not come back for an hour. Maya took it in her hands, the cardboard soft from travel. Inside she found letters tied with twine, a plain ticket, and a faded photograph of a woman smiling with an easy, fierce light. Her name, Claire, was written on the back. The letters were dense with small things, apologies that trembled with honesty, jokes that kept hope alive, plans that had been delayed by war and distance. One note read, "I will return. I promise. If I do not, forgive me." It was both a vow and a plea. Maya felt the letters burn cold and hot at once. She had helped strangers before, but she had never been a keeper of someone's past. She sat alone and read page after page. The words made a picture of a man who had loved fiercely and carried regret the way others carried heavy coats. She understood, with a strange clarity, that Thomas needed more than coffee. She wrote a short note and left it folded inside the box. "If he returns, tell him there is a place here," she wrote. "He does not have to be perfect to be welcome." It felt like stepping into water for the first time, bracing and real. Soon after, a woman walked into the diner. Her hair caught the light like wind chimes, and when she smiled she filled the room with a soft sound. Her name was Claire. She paused at the photograph peeking through the box and touched it with a careful finger. "I used to sit here," she said. "My brother loved this spot." Her voice had a memory in it. Maya felt sudden lines connect like constellations. Claire visited often, bringing pieces of conversation that fit into the puzzle Thomas had left. When Claire and Thomas finally saw each other across the rain-silver glass, both moved as if pulled by a gentle, inexorable tide. They reconnected slowly. Thomas explained that the road had been long, and that courage was complicated. Claire told him she had waited, and that waiting had been both a prayer and a punishment. They chose to try again, not because everything had been fixed, but because they wanted to see if the map of a life could be redrawn. The diner changed with them. People who came for eggs and coffee began to stay longer. A small community formed around the counter, built from soft things. Listening, bringing hot casseroles to those in need, patching a cold roof. A young veteran came in one night with rain in his bones and no plan. Maya slid him a free coffee slip without thinking. Thomas, who had been watching, stood and sat with the man. He spoke not with orders, but with the kind of warmth learned from hard nights. "Start with one step," he said. "Find a warm place. Then one more step." The small acts multiplied. The jar that held free coffee slips began to be filled not only with change, but with notes of kindness. Someone left a warm blanket. Another person left a little envelope with money and the words, "For anyone who needs it." The town learned to return favors with interest. People who had once left found reasons to come back to the table. Maya used a small gift Thomas left her to fix a leaky pipe and to buy Jonah a thicker blanket. She also used part of it to see Ruth's doctor. Thomas left a note that said simply, "Thank you for making room." It was both a confession and a promise. Life did not become smooth. Bills still piled and nights were still long. But the diner had become a place where courage was practiced in small ways. Maya started drawing again, filling a sketchbook with quick lines of people laughing and crying and sharing pie. Jonah grew with an unshakable faith that a small hand could change a hurt into something softer. Time moved as it always does, and Thomas and Claire decided to build a life in the town. They painted an old house a stubborn blue and learned to keep small promises. They invited Maya and Jonah to their first dinner in the new place. Thomas gave Maya back a small sketchbook she had left in his box months earlier. "Keep drawing," he told her. "Your drawings make the world kinder." That small gift mattered more than the money. It was a vivid reminder that some debts are repaid with friendship, and that a life is often repaired in fragments. Coffee, listening, an offered hand. Years later, Maya taught a new girl behind the counter how to fold the free coffee slips and how to notice the small signs that someone needed a place to sit. On a rainy evening, a young soldier came in with rain-dark hair and tired eyes. Maya reached under the jar and slid a slip across the counter. She wrote on a napkin, "You are welcome here." The soldier read the words, folded them carefully, and left with eyes bright as if he had been steadied by a small lighthouse. The diner remained imperfect and human, shaped by the choices of many hands. Small acts of kindness became its quiet law. People returned not because a miracle happened, but because a place held them when they were fragile enough to break. Maya's days were small studies in balance. She woke before dawn. She made pancakes for Jonah, swept the front steps, and started the first pot of coffee. Jonah, 5 years old, had hair that stood up like a small sun. He believed his mother could fix anything with a hug and a joke. He loved to draw suns and hide them under saucers. Once a customer found one and left a bright coin on the counter, saying, "Keep that kid's habit alive." The coin went into the jar and became another chance. Aunt Ruth had a steady kindness that shaped the diner. She used to stir gravy like a prayer and mend torn coats for free. When she grew weak, Maya became the keeper. It was not a choice made all at once. It came in small steps. She learned to listen while washing plates, to count bills while wiping tables, to soothe the crying child and make the coffee machine obey its steam. Thomas's letters were a slow map. Some notes were short. "Found a dog today. Named him Lucky." Others were long and wound through nights. He wrote about fear and the tiny acts that helped him stay human. One letter said, "I left to find the man I wanted to be. The road taught me that courage is messy and smells like fear. When I go back, I want to bring an honest self, not a perfect one." Maya felt the words as a truth and as a plea. Claire's waiting was different. She had marked the days on a kitchen calendar, stacking them like coins. She worked in the library and brought books to children. When the brother she loved did not come back on time, she turned patience into a habit. The day she walked into the diner, she smelled like lemon soap and rain. She touched the photograph and the letters with a careful finger and laughed at a joke Jonah made. Later she cried alone, because waiting had small costs she did not always reveal. The box of letters became part of the town's life. Ellen from the bakery brought scones with a note. For homecoming. Gus the mechanic fixed a step and refused payment. A teenager who had once slept in doorways began washing dishes so he could belong. People began leaving warm blankets, jars of soup, and small envelopes marked for anyone who needs it. The jar of free coffee slips began to fill not only with coins, but with notes and small gifts. Thomas learned the rhythm of the town by doing small work. He painted a fence, mended a porch, and learned names. He asked how people wanted to be spoken to and learned to listen like it was a craft. Claire and Thomas did not rush to rebuild a perfect life. They chose to try again with small, honest steps. They painted their house a stubborn blue and planted a tiny garden in the front yard. They hosted simple dinners and left jars of jam by neighbors' doors. Maya started sketching again in slow moments. Her lines were quick and honest, not perfect. She sold a drawing to a woman who loved the way Maya had captured a curious smile. That money went into the jar and then back into the town. Jonah's sons began to hang from the ceiling, a bright crown above the counter. A sudden winter night revealed how close the town had become. A pipe burst in the apartment above the diner and water rushed down. Neighbors came with buckets and towels. Thomas climbed a ladder and fixed a valve. Gus brought tools. Together, they worked until the place was dry and warm again. Afterwards, the diner served free cocoa and bread to everyone who had come to help. It was not heroic. It was neighborly. The town's cures were small. A job for a teenager, a visit to an old woman, teaching a class at the library. Someone offered to check broken heaters for free. People began to see staying as a brave thing. The mechanic's son learned to tie a tie. The nurse who had planned to leave signed up to help Ruth. Life did not become easy. It became shared. Maya used a gift Thomas left her to fix a leaky pipe and buy Jonah a warm blanket. She paid Ruth's doctor part of the bill. The envelope he left said, "For the woman who made room." The money was modest, but the letter meant more. It told her that small mercies change lives. One evening, after closing, Thomas returned a small sketchbook Maya had left in the box months before. He found it while packing to help Claire move. "Keep drawing," he said. "Your drawings make the world kinder." The words hit her like a simple, honest light. They decided not to sell the diner. Maya felt rooted by the people who had made it home. She saw small joy everywhere. Jonah learning to cook pancakes, people bringing casseroles, a new teacher at the library starting a reading group. The diner became a place people visited to feel less alone. A plaque later appeared on the wall. "For those who make room." Jonah tapped it proudly. The town told the story often, not as a legend but as a lesson about how small acts matter. Years passed. The jar still sat on the counter and the slips were used for soldiers, travelers, and anyone who needed to sit. Maya trained a new girl behind a register and taught her how to notice small signs of need. The diner kept its chipped cups and familiar steam. People returned because the place held them. It did not judge them. The man who came for a free coffee once had learned to return. Claire learned how to forgive small mistakes and to ask for help when she needed it. Maya learned to keep a small hope and to pass it forward. The town changed slowly, by the patience of many hands. This is the way the story wanted to be told, with ordinary details and a sense that being brave often means coming back to ordinary things. It was not a tale of big prizes or dramatic confessions. It was a story about the quiet bravery of staying, of listening, of making a cup of coffee warm for someone who had lost his way. One spring, a visiting reporter came to write about small towns. She asked for the diner's history and sat with a cup while Jonah gave her a sun drawing. The reporter listened to stories, of a box of letters, of a pipe fixed in the night, of a woman who had paid for coffee and changed a town. She asked Maya how a single act could ripple outward. Maya answered simply, "People need small reasons to believe things can change." She thought of how many times she had felt alone and how one warm cup had made her feel noticed. The reporter left with a piece that did not become famous, but it reminded the region that small places hold large love. Other diners began jars and posted notes for anyone who needed a warm seat. Maya learned to accept help when offered. A neighbor named Rosa taught her to sew a torn apron. Jonah learned to sweep the porch and to ask how others were. He learned that returning is a choice you make again and again. Sometimes it was easy and sometimes it was not, but he learned to try. On a clear summer evening, Thomas and Claire and Maya stood together under string lights outside the diner. They watched Jonah chase fireflies and run with clumsy steps of a child who believes in simple miracles. The town hummed with contentment. The diner bell rang and people kept coming, ordering coffee or finding a place to be ordinary. The story did not end like a song. There were losses and repairs, pain and slow healings. Yet, in the space between brokenness and repair, the town found quiet steadiness. The soldier who had once sat alone now joined neighbors at the counter. The woman who had waited learned to trust a small promise. The diner stayed, imperfect, warmed by hands that chose to give and return. They learned to stay together, always. What did you feel when Maya paid for the soldier's coffee and later read his letters? Did the small acts of kindness move you? Share your thoughts in the comments. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to the Beyond Yesterday YouTube channel for more stories that remind us to return and to heal.